So there's this quote, fear can hold you prisoner, hope can set you free.
Right, from the Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, exactly. We all know it. But what if those prison walls aren't, actually made of stone?
What if they're internal?
Right. What if the bars are constructed entirely out of your own consciousness?
That is exactly what we're getting into today.
Yeah, so today we're doing a deep dive into an essay titled Escape from Despair.
Yeah.
It's written by Xu Feng and edited by Kanaer. And I want to welcome you, our listener, as we try to map out this really ambitious, highly synthesized worldview.
Ambitious is definitely the word. It's this bold attempt to completely redefine what human despair actually is, where it comes from and ultimately how to transcend it.
And the scope of this text is just massive.
Oh, it really is. I mean, it fuses global religions, Eastern and Western philosophies, even historical and political thought, all into this single framework.
Which means we're going to be touching on a wildly diverse array of figures today.
We are. But, our objective here is just to impartially map out this intellectual architecture. We're not endorsing the viewpoints, right? We're strictly exploring these ideas exactly as they're presented in the source material.
Right, just seeing how the author attempts to solve this huge fundamental problem of human suffering.
Exactly.
So the essay starts by confronting a pretty stark reality. Each year, hundreds of thousands of people commit suicide, and tens of millions of people are just struggling every single day in absolute despair.
Yeah, it's a very heavy starting point.
It is. And the traditional assumption we all have is that external hardships like poverty, natural disasters, societal collapse are the root drivers of this suffering.
Sure, that's what conventional wisdom tells us.
But the text makes this super sharp pivot right at the beginning.
Okay.
It claims that natural disasters and hard material lives are not actually what make people despair.
Right. The text asserts that a person only really falls into despair when they suffer mental and spiritual trauma, combined with, and this is key, the consciousness of seeing no better prospect.
The consciousness of seeing no better prospect.
Yeah. That phrase is essentially the fulcrum of the author's entire philosophy.
So despair isn't like a punishment from above.
No, not at all. It's not framed as a punishment from the greatest creator, or from gods, Buddha, or any saints. It's purely a product of humanity's, they call it mysterious consciousness.
Both on an individual and a collective level, right?
Exactly.
Thinking about this in modern terms, it's like despair isn't a hardware problem.
A hardware problem.
Yeah, it's not caused by your external environment or the physical casing of your life. It's a software glitch in this mysterious consciousness.
Ooh, I like that analogy.
You could have a perfect material life, right? Best hardware on the market, plenty of money, physical safety. But if your internal software is corrupted by a consciousness that, sees no future,
the whole system crashes.
the whole system crashes into despair. The external world doesn't dictate the internal weather.
Right. And because it's a software issue, the text insists that everyone has to start from within themselves to escape it.
You can't just buy a new casing.
No, or move to a new city and expect your internal programming to just fix itself. The text says this mysterious consciousness acts as the filter through which we experience reality.
And if that filter is compromised?
By fear or a lack of prospect, the result is despair, totally regardless of the physical inputs.
Okay, so if consciousness is the operating system, the author must outline the specific errors, right? The bugs that are causing the system to crash.
They do, yeah. The text actually categorizes them. It breaks human desperation down into 4 distinct categories.
Okay, let's hear them.
There's the despair of life, the despair of mind, the despair of soul, and the despair of consciousness.
That's a lot of despair.
It is. But while all 4 are addressed, the text points to the despair of the mind as the absolute linchpin.
The core issue.
Right. Escaping the despair of the mind requires tackling the ultimate human fear. The author states really bluntly that death may befall anyone at any time. Cheerful.
I know, right? But the point is, if we don't remove the threat of death from our consciousness, it doesn't matter if our life is brilliant or bleak. It will all just be an illusion and a tragedy in the end.
Okay, wait. I have to challenge this premise a little bit.
Go for it.
Because fearing death isn't just a philosophical misstep. It's a hardwired biological survival instinct.
Right, of course.
We are physically built, down to our nervous system and adrenaline, to avoid death at all costs. So asking someone to just remove that threat from their mind, it feels like telling them to consciously turn off their body's need for oxygen.
No, I totally agree. It absolutely goes against our biology.
Yeah.
The author is essentially asking the reader to override millions of years of evolutionary hardware with this radical new software patch.
So how does that patch actually work?
Well, the solution presented is that one must completely stop viewing death as a termination.
Right.
The text asks how we can turn the bitter wine of death into the sweet nectar of life. And they capitalize life here to denote something far larger than just a biological lifespan. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So the requisite paradigm shift is accepting that death is merely a transition to a very specific, non-material reality.
So if it's not the end, they're suggesting like an afterlife ecosystem.
Yes.
Does this tie into the traditional concepts of heaven and hell, or is it a unique kind of geography?
It's highly specific. The text states that through self-refinery and self-improvement, individuals can attain the qualities of celestial beings.
Okay.
And upon doing so, they transition to live in the heaven of life. The author actually names these realms explicitly:
What are they called?
the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, and the Elysium Island continent.
Wow. Very specific.
Very. And the text is adamant that this heaven is not some illusory conception, invented by religionists to just anesthetize the masses against the harsh reality of mortality.
They're presenting it as a literal destination.
Yes, a literal factual destination.
Well, if a person truly internalizes that, if they actually successfully install that software update that believes death is just a train ride to the 1,000-year world or the Elysium Island continent,
Then the biological terror of death just evaporates.
right, the despair of the mind collapses because the core threat has been neutralized.
Exactly.
But, I mean, to convince a modern mind that these non-material realms actually exist, the author has to provide some heavy proof, right?
Right, which leads into the despair of the soul. And this is where the text brings in a staggeringly eclectic roster of sources.
Yeah, let's talk about that roster because this is where it gets really wild.
It does. So to unveil the mysteries of life in heaven, the text cites foundational religious figures: Jesus, Buddha, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Lao Tzu.
Which makes sense for a spiritual text.
Sure, but it doesn't stop there. It includes Seth.
Wait, Seth.
Yeah, Seth, a widely known channeled entity in New Age philosophy, and the concept of ESP, extrasensory perception.
Okay, so we're getting into New Age and parapsychology.
And then, to establish what it calls a correct worldview, it pulls in the Prophet Muhammad again, alongside Avalokitesvara and Siddhagarbha Bodhisattva.
Both highly revered figures in Buddhism, right?
Right. And Mao Zedong.
Okay, Mao Zedong, that is a pivot. If you were combining the spiritual architecture of Jesus and Buddha with the political revolution of Mao Zedong, and then you throw in a channeled New Age entity in ESP, you are building a wildly unconventional framework.
You really are.
My hypothesis here is that the author isn't taking these figures at face value, right? Like, they can't be adopting their full doctrines.
No, definitely not.
To make Sakyamuni Buddha and Mao Zedong fit into the same cohesive system, the text must be stripping away the traditional dogma to find some underlying structural similarity.
That is the precise mechanism the author is using.
Okay, I thought so.
The text treats these figures almost like different scientists who are all observing the same cosmic laws, just from different historical and cultural vantage points.
Oh, that's a cool way to look at it.
Yeah, it mines them for unified themes to construct this singular path that it calls the Great Way of Life.
The Great Way. Okay, let's trace how the text actually extracts a single cosmic law from such different vantage points. Like, how does it connect, say, Islam and Taoism?
Well, the author pulls a quote from the Prophet Muhammad regarding the necessity of having authority to pass beyond the zones of heaven and earth.
Okay.
And it pairs this directly with Lao Tzu's concept of heaven's net, which is broad and wide and lets nothing slip through.
Oh, wow.
So it synthesizes the Islamic concept of a cosmic threshold with the Taoist concept of universal inevitability.
That's a huge synthesis.
It is, and it concludes that the authority required to navigate this cosmic net is reverence for the greatest creator, making it the absolute highest commandment of life.
Okay, so that handles the cosmic architecture. But integrating Mao Zedong and the Bodhisattvas requires a totally different thematic thread.
Right.
I imagine this addresses the worldly aspect of the philosophy, like how we are actually supposed to act while we're still here in the physical realm.
Spot on. It addresses the despair of life directly. So from these figures, the text extracts the theme of selfless service.
Selfless service.
Yeah. It argues that to free ourselves from despair, we have to release our personal interests, put ourselves in the shoes of suffering people, and dedicate our lives to society and nature.
So the unifying thread between a communist revolutionary and a compassionate bodhisattva, according to this framework, is just the complete abandonment of the selfish ego in service to the collective.
Exactly.
Man, the text is weaving the spiritual destinations defined by Jesus and Buddha, the cosmic authority of Muhammad and Lao Tzu, and the earthly dedication to the collective from these political and philosophical leaders.
It's all forming the Great Way.
The Great Way. But the text also spends a significant amount of time defining what this Great Way is not, right?
It does by outlining a series of what it calls small trails.
And if you're listening to this deep dive right now, on your commute to a high-pressure corporate job or while you're working toward a major academic milestone, this definition of a small trail might feel incredibly pointed.
It might sting a little. The author categorizes a really wide array of human pursuits as small trails that lead away from the Great Way and deeper into despair.
What's on the list?
Well, it warns against seeking to become a celebrity, a hero, a high-ranking official, or simply accumulating wealth.
Just a basic ego stuff.
Right. It also condemns overthrowing regimes, damaging a harmonious society, suppressing religions, or forming armed groups.
Okay. Those seem pretty obviously bad for society. But it gets weirder, doesn't it?
It does. It also includes cultivating special magic powers, practicing witchcraft, sorcery, black art divination, or trying to conjure gods and ghosts.
Witchcraft and sorcery.
Okay.
Okay. And then, and this is the part that gets me, right alongside witchcraft and embezzlement, it lists striving for a doctoral scholarship or a professorship title as a small trail.
Yeah.
Placing a PhD on the same list as sorcery is jarring.
It's definitely an interesting grouping.
But, applying the logic of the text, it seems like all of these pursuits, whether it's wealth, magic, or a fancy academic title, they're all driven by the ego's desire for control.
Control, status, or special advantage in the material world, yeah.
Right.
The overarching warning is against seeking leverage over others. The text insists that life has to be lived fair and square.
Fair and square.
Embezzling, forming cliques, achieving goals clandestinely, by hook or crook, all of that is defined as the evil way of life.
Because it violates that cosmic net.
Exactly. The author notes that nothing you do remains unknown forever, reinforcing Lao Tzu's idea of the inescapable net. Any attempt to game the system, whether through black magic or corporate climbing, is ultimately futile and just breeds despair.
Wow. So if all the traditional markers of success, wealth, status, academic prestige are small trails to be avoided, what does walking the Great Way actually look like on a daily basis?
It's surprisingly grounded.
Like for a philosophy that synthesizes the deepest mysteries of the universe, the actionable advice is pretty basic.
Very much so. The Great Way of Life is stripped of all that grandiosity. The text mandates revering the greatest creator, nature, gods, and Buddha.
Okay.
But on an interpersonal level, it just requires honoring one's parents, respecting national leaders, and abiding by the law.
That sounds very standard.
It even explicitly includes the golden rule: do unto others as you would have others do unto you.
It advocates for respecting the old, loving the young, and just being honest, industrious, and kind, right?
Yeah, that's the core of it.
It's wild that the ultimate goal, after absorbing the teachings of history's greatest figures and understanding this complex non-material architecture of the universe, is simply to strive to be an ordinary, simple, and happy person.
That's the destination. But achieving that simplicity is not easy.
I can imagine. We're pretty wired for complexity.
Right. It requires a massive cognitive leap. The text recognizes that humanity is conditioned to seek complexity, status, and material security.
Those small trails.
Exactly. To truly walk the Great Way and escape mental despair, the author insists we must practice unconventional thinking.
Unconventional thinking. The text mentions utilizing the secrets of the Noble Eightfold Path of thinking to break the shackles imposed by traditional thoughts.
Right.
It argues that things deemed impossible by conventional thought become entirely possible through unconventional thought.
This is where we need that 3D analogy.
Yeah, we often use the analogy of trying to understand 3D space while you're trapped on a 2D piece of paper.
It's the perfect way to visualize this.
Right, like if your entire reality only has length and width, the concept of up is literally incomprehensible. It sounds like magic to a 2D person.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the mechanism of unconventional thinking. Conventional thinking is that 2D plane of materialism.
So the only way to move is side to side.
Right, and on that plane, logic dictates that acquiring more wealth, status, or control, the small trails, is the only way to move forward and escape suffering.
But unconventional thinking adds the z-axis.
Yes. It introduces a spiritual logic where letting go of the ego and embracing simplicity elevates you out of the 2D plane altogether.
You just list right off the paper.
The text literally states you need to give up your inherent mindset and open your heart to comprehend this.
You basically have to fundamentally shift the dimension of your consciousness.
You do.
And once you manage that shift, the text introduces its ultimate framework for achieving and maintaining this state. It's a concept called Lifechanyuan.
Yes, Lifechanyuan.
And the essay doesn't just present this as a passing idea, right? It frames it as the definitive culmination of human spiritual evolution.
It does. Lifechanyuan is positioned as the final course for mankind.
The final course.
Yeah. The text establishes this hierarchy. Heaven has its Tao, Earth has its Tao, and people have their Tao.
Right.
By rigorously following the humane Tao, which is that ordinary, simple, honest, great way we discussed,
Right.
humans will attain the immortal Tao. Lifechanyuan represents both the educational process and the ultimate destination.
And the author promises that if people enter Lifechanyuan to learn and comprehend with open minds, they will definitively discard their despair.
That's the promise.
They will enter the Lifechanyuan era and eventually reach the Elysian world of heaven.
It's a very complete system.
And the essay concludes not with a passive summary, but with this really aggressive call to action. It literally commands the reader to deny, refuse, and abandon despair.
It urges humanity to join hands, love, and help each other, and march toward the field of hope.
So, synthesizing this entire journey we've been on, the text offers a roadmap that completely inverts our standard operating procedure.
It really does. We've explored a worldview that treats despair not as an inevitable reaction to a harsh physical world, but as an internal software glitch.
Caused by a restricted conventional consciousness.
Exactly. And the text demands we neutralize the ultimate fear of death by redefining it as a transition to a very real, non-material reality, like the 1,000-year world.
And to reach that reality, we have to abandon the small trails of ego, wealth, academic elitism, and control.
Right. And instead, walk the great way.
Built from the unified themes of history's most diverse figures, from Muhammad to Mao Zedong.
We utilize unconventional thinking to break our 2D material shackles, ultimately striving to be ordinary, simple, and happy within the framework of Lifechanyuan.
It is a cohesive, deeply ambitious philosophical architecture.
It really is. It attempts to provide a definitive cure for the despair of the modern mind.
Which gives you a tremendous amount to process.
Absolutely.
So as you continue with your day, consider this final thought. Think about the author's premise, that your despair is a product of your own mysterious consciousness.
Right.
If you look at a major stressor in your life right now, a career problem, a financial worry, something that feels like it is holding you prisoner, how much of that burden is the actual physical reality of the situation? And how much of it is your internal software running a conventional 2D program of fear?
That's a great question.
What would happen if you applied Sway Thing's unconventional thinking to your biggest problem today? Could you find that third dimension that suddenly makes the impossible possible? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. Stay curious, keep exploring, and we will catch you next time.